Hi everyone, this is Robbie with Warriorspirit-teachings, and today I want to talk with you guys about integration of the ego and your higher self. So first I want to talk about the ego. So your ego is your primitive self. It's what you think is yourself in this life and who you are walking through the world. So kind of an example an example of how you're tapping into your ego is kind of like your will, your drive to push forward in life. Maybe you're competitive. It could be, if you get angry, frustrated, irritated. It's kind of all of those lower vibrational energies, which I'll get to in the minute, like how it all incorporates and why it is so important. It is very important to have a sense of ego as well. It's your sense of self, it's your primitive drive and actions that you possess. I just want to talk about a little bit about my death of the ego. So, if you haven't heard about this is something that happens pretty often to everybody that's going through spiritual journey and awakening, growing up, however you want to look at it, whichever term. A lot of people will sometime in their life go through the death of the ego. And so a little bit about my experience with that. So it was, okay, so let's reverse time because I want to put a timeline on it so you can know. So probably about, I'd say 5 to 6 years ago, I was living at the height of my life of what I thought. I felt like really strong in myself. I felt powerful, confident, just wasn't going to let anything get me down, was full of motivation and will and to drive, and move forward, and had a really strong sense of self. But looking at it now, that I was living in the height of my ego is what that was, kind of like that saying where you think your shit don't stink. It's kind of bad to admit it a little bit, but yeah, I had a really strong ego. I think it was over the board. Granted, don't get me wrong, I wasn't heartless and I still had compassion and still cared about people, but I mean, I feel like my ego was a bit on steroids, and it's interesting, to think about it now, like the person I am now. Okay, so I'm living at the height of my ego. And then all of a sudden, everything in my life changed. Granted, I made the choice, but it was like I made that first step in that first change and I moved. Like I moved out of the city that I was living in and I moved and I made that choice. But along with it was like everything crumbled. And I didn't have a choice in that, good friends that I had, I totally lost contact with, like I wanted to keep that relationship going, but they didn't. They had, different ideas. We didn't live in the same area anymore. And so, split off of that. I left a really great job that paid really well. And then this new place, I had such high hopes to make more money and to do better for myself. And it was like everywhere I looked, I just couldn't find anything that would pay anything or anything comparable to what I was making, I should say. And so, that was different. And there was a lot of times, there was a good stretch of time where I just couldn't even find a job. It was like I apply to these places, and this never happened to me before, where I'd apply to these places and want to work there and just wouldn't hear anything back. So there was a long stretch of time there where it was like I just couldn't even get a job. And that really screwed with my ego. Screwed with my head, but my ego, because, I'm specifically going to talk about how it affected my ego. And, because another part of my ego is, and still who I am today, is I'm the kind of person that I'm really independent, and I just want to take care of my shit. I want to have all of my things, my ducks in a row, I guess you could say. So, I want to have, a good place to live. I want to have money and a good amount of it coming in. And I want to have friends, and I want to have family connections, and I want to be happy and enjoy myself, And there's nothing wrong with that. Like that, it doesn't mean that you're just living in your ego if those are the things you want, because, I think it's important for us if we have certain things that we want. But that's the point, though, is that the ego was telling me I have to make a certain amount of money, and life was like, no. And so what I'm getting at is, back to the story, is I was stripped of my friendships. My family members, they started to just disappear as well. Like I had really close connections, with a few of my family members. And, and they were like best friends to me, kind of. We communicated multiple times a day. We'd see each other like every other day, you know what I mean? And so that was tough, because it was like once I left, they just kind of forgot about me, and I had to pursue that relationship to try to keep it connected. But it was like that, was just stripped away. They no longer wanted to do that. And it was crazy because, at the time it really upset me, because I was like, man, is this something that I did? And I just couldn't figure it out. But it's like, now I know. So my job and my money was stripped from me, my family, my good friends, and I was in a new area, so I wasn't in what I consider my home. I live here again to this day, like I moved back and this is where I live, but gosh, it was tough, because it was like living in that place. I was living in a state that I was actually born in, and I just don't like that state. So no offense to anybody that's watching this that actually knows me. Like, it's a great state for you guys, and that's awesome. I'm glad you like it, but I don't like it, and I have a lot of family, my dad lives there, all this stuff, but I just don't like that state. There's just, ever since I was a kid, there's just something that just doesn't vibe right with me, it feels like cold and empty to me. And so, that was a whole experience too, because I felt like I was stripped of my home, I was back in the state that I grew up in, and it just didn't feel right, like inside, like in my soul, and I would try to like go outside and, go for walks or go jog, connect with nature. And it was like, no matter how many times I tried, and tried to appreciate being in a new area and the things it had to offer, like it just wasn't doing it for me. And so, yeah, anyway, so I was stripped of all of that. And then it was such a interesting experience, but really it was shitty. It was hard. And just like I was saying, the death of the ego, that's exactly how it felt. I felt like everything that I knew that was me, that was my life, was gone. It was just stripped away. And I think for a while I was kind of like, what the heck, and kind of in a shock period. And then of course I got actually upset, you know? Got upset thinking, man, like just because I moved, I didn't move that far away, not clear across, you know, United States or anything, just a state over. Like, why would everybody act like I just died or something? Like, my family didn't want a whole lot to do with me. My friendships all went by the wayside. So, and then I was in a new area too. And, you know, it's like, it's kind of difficult to make friends, you know, right off the get-go when you're in a new place, because, you know, you're new. You're just trying to figure out the town, figure out where to meet people, like, you know, any of that stuff. And that was also a weird thing too, because I did eventually get a job and worked with people, and it was like I just couldn't connect and click with any of them. And then I eventually left that job and went to a different one. And, you know, there again, you know, I never made the type of money that I was making before in my hometown. And so that was still, you know, that was pretty hard. And I just, even at that new job, I just couldn't connect with anybody. Like, no matter where I worked, no matter if I went out to an event or something like that, it was like, just really just couldn't connect with anyone. And yeah, so I just felt like, you know, I was in this like place of solitude. I pretty much just had, you know, my boyfriend, the guy I was dating at the time. And then of course my little dog Stanley, you know, he's my buddy through and through. He's right there behind the camera. But so yeah, if you ever hear any like ruckus, you know, moving around, flapping his ears, that's Stanley. He's my little Cocker Spaniel. But yeah, back to the death of the ego. Sorry about that. Kind of went off track there. But yeah, it was just crazy. It was like, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know. I was like, this is my life. Like, this is what came to my life. Like, I felt so lost and out of place. Like, it kind of felt like God kind of took me out, like, whoop, took me out of what I thought was my life, you know, for all those years, from like childhood up to, you know, my 20s. And then was like, whoop, took me out and then plopped me off into this other dimension. And it was just like cold and lonely, and you know, it was miserable. And it was crazy too, because I actually got depression, but at the time I didn't even know that I had depression, because I've always been a really positive, like upbeat person, and I always had, you know, my drive and my willpower to think like, oh, it's okay if things don't work out, you know, like it'll work out eventually in the future. So I've always been the type of person that was like, the glass is half full. And yeah, it was really tough. It was a really tough time, because, you know, I guess I found out I was depressed because I'd rather sleep. It was like my life in my dreams was better than my reality. And it was sad. It was like, in my reality, you know, I was like traveling, I was having fun with friends, I was having fun with friends that like I'd never met in my life, you know, but somehow they were my friends, and we were like doing stuff, you know, and I was hanging out with my family and all these things that wasn't happening in real life. And so it was really hard to like, you know, wrap my mind around that and stuff. And it was a really dark period in time. So I think you guys understand that. So, you know, kind of an idea of what the death of the ego is, you know. So I thought that my life was over. And, you know, maybe you guys have kind of went through some kind of similar experience like that. Maybe you're going through the death of the ego right now. But I want to tell you that, you know, hold on, because it will get better. And so let's move on. So I think now I should explain the other part of us. So We have the ego, and the other side is the spirit, or the higher self. As you've probably heard, like throughout the spiritual community, they use that term quite a bit. And so your spirit, like, one of the neat things that I learned about the spirit was from Floyd Hand, which is, I've talked about him in other videos of mine, but he was this amazing Lakota elder. He passed away a little bit ago, but man, his teachings will always stick with me. He was one of the most influential, I can't describe, but he meant so much to me. He was so important to me, and to my whole family as well, actually, and he taught us so much. And one of the things he would talk about is how you need to trust your spirit. How to know that, like, yes, this is you in the physical, but there's a bigger, more powerful, limitless part of you, your spirit, that's there. And to trust it, meaning, there's times where, like, maybe you're in a predicament or you're in a hard situation and you just get this little knowing. It's like a little ping, in your head, and you get this idea of maybe something you should do. And you do that and it, like, saves you, like it takes you out of that bad situation. It's really a vague example, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's your higher self, it's your higher knowing. And coincidentally, it's your direct channel to God. God, universe, the creator, whatever it is that you believe in, the higher power, source. And through your spirit, you're able to get messages directly from the divine. And so it could help, influence you and protect you and, keep you going on the right path. And so, I think I just want to explain a little bit about the next thing I want to explain about is, like, the balance between the light and the dark energies. Stick in there with me. I'm not going off track, really. Just going to put this in another way that maybe you could understand. It's so important to balance your energies. You could think of it as the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. And, the light is connected to your spirit, to your higher self. It's that pure, powerful, unwavering, limitless, infinite energy that is you. That's what your spirit is, your higher self. And then your ego, point at myself, is it's what you have here in the 3D, in this physical dimension. So when people refer to 3D, if you're not familiar, that's another term that's really used in the spiritual community, it just means the physical realm. Like, your flesh and bone, the things around me here, And so, like I said, that's, you could compare that to the dark. That's your primitive way of being, That's your thinking instincts. That's who you are, in this flesh, in this physical body. And, and with that, not to say that all traits of the ego are bad, but some of them can be really toxic and at a lower vibration. And so what I'm getting at is it's so important to be able to come to a place where you can integrate both of them. To integrate the ego and integrate your spirit, your higher self. Because they're both you. They're both so important to what makes you you. You need that ego, you need that will, that drive, that want to push forward. You also need that ego, say like somebody is, pushing your boundaries. You need that ego that's going to be like, no, to like stand up and be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Or no, you can't say that to me. You can't, come here in my space. That's an example. And then of course you need your higher self that can come in, maybe after like go back to that situation I was talking about. Say somebody is coming and they're overstepping their boundaries, right? So you're like, no, stop. But maybe you're too far in your ego and you got upset, you got mad, you might have started yelling, you might have cussed at them, whatever it was. And then, after you cool down and maybe a few hours go by or a day or however, then maybe your higher self comes in and you get that idea, that aha moment, like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have been that hard on that person. I wasn't even thinking that maybe that person got upset at me and came at me because they were triggered by the situation. They were triggered by how I was acting, what I said, So that's just an example of that. And then, say if it's a good friend or a family member or something like that, and you're feeling guilty and upset about it, like how you reacted too much in your ego, maybe that's the time to like go in and apologize, None of us are perfect, and it takes a lot of strong character to be able to admit your faults and to go to that person and say, hey, I am sorry that I said that, I know you were triggered because of this and this, and I got triggered and I went overboard, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Can we talk about this? And then maybe you can actually, talk it out and come to a reasonable solution between the both of you. So that's just kind of a little example of how the ego and how the spirit both work hand in hand. So like I was saying, it's so important to be able to accept both sides of you, to accept the dark and accept the light, to not push them away. Because it's so often that, and I did this a lot, and the reason I'm doing this video too is because I have came to a place of integration where I have accepted myself, my dark qualities, and my light attributes. Because there's been plenty of times in my life where I was like, my dark qualities, I kind of let them reign. Like I was kind of explaining before my death of the ego about 6 years ago, I'd kind of let my ego reign and my spirit kind of went down. And then there's been times in my life where I was like, I'd let my spirit rule and I'd put my ego really small. And when I did that, coincidentally, I got walked on. I got used. I got pushed around, maybe not physically, but, I was such a bleeding heart. I had such a big, big heart that I was like, I would do anything for anyone. And that was horrible because then I attracted all these people that were users and abusers and narcissists. And man, they just love somebody that is a giver. And so I'd give. And then eventually I just got depleted, And so what I'm saying is it would have been an important time to have my ego to balance it out and be like, no, I can be loving and kind and giving and compassionate and still have a big heart, but I also know when I'm getting taken advantage of and when I'm being used. And to be able to like say no, to stand up for myself, draw that line in the sand and be like, no, I'm sorry. I can't help you with that, and be okay with it. And so, yeah, there's just many times in my life where, I was kind of ashamed of my darker traits, my shadow side, my negative qualities, my ego side, however which way you want to name it. I was ashamed of my ego certain times in my life. And now I just see how it's important to be able to just see those things and to incorporate them and to like love them, because it's a part of me. And so I want to encourage you guys to do that as well. There's certain things that you do in your life, certain things that are in your character that you don't care for. To take, to evaluate it, to look at it. And I'm not saying like, to be like a mean, narcissistic, domineering type of person, that's okay. Like, then that's when your spirit should come in and check that and be like, no, like everybody deserves equality, everybody deserves to be respected, things like that. So it's just so important to be able to integrate them both. And then to just not be ashamed and to just step into your power fully and to be who you are authentically. And to not be ashamed, whichever way that looks. So, anyway, I think that's all for today. And I hope that you guys got some value out of this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and hit the little bell icon so that you can be notified when my next video comes up. I have all kinds of different topics in the works. My next video actually is going to be a spirit animal video. And so if you haven't seen my previous video, go check that out. My previous video is about the crow animal spirit, the power animal, the totem, and the type of energies it possesses and the symbolism and the omens. So anyway, it's a really neat video and I had a lot of fun with it. So I'm going to do another one on a different animal. Excuse me. But of course I can't tell you what it is because I got to keep you excited so that you come back and check it out. So anyway, if you got some value out of this, definitely like, definitely subscribe. If you are interested in, doing some spiritual mentoring with me, all the information is down below. Definitely check out my videos and things like that. You can reach out to me. You can follow me on my different platforms and find out more information. Typically my platforms are kind of the same. I kind of have the same stuff going on, but I do try to like mix it up a bit. So I put a little extra stuff on Facebook, a little different stuff on Instagram. So try to keep you guys entertained. So anyway, I'd really appreciate it if you follow me on my other platforms. And if you come back again. So I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, healthy, and happy. And I wish you all the best. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.